Perfect.
Hi guys, welcome. I am going to talk to you today about a very disturbing cold case. It's a 44-year-old case out of Pennsylvania. It is about a man named Randy Brosius, and unfortunately he was a part of a law enforcement drug sting that went terribly, terribly wrong. Sometimes these things, no matter how well you plan, sometimes these things go upside down, and unfortunately this man has never been seen since. So let's talk about this case. Unfortunately, I feel like this is one of those cases that all of these cases are sad and really get to you. But when you find out that a life has been taken or a life is gone and it's missing, a human being is vanished from the face of the earth, and then you find that there's not much information out there, there's not even enough to write a 500-word blog post. Those I find even more heartbreaking, because this was a human being, and there's not much left of this person's life. And so that is the case with Randy Brosius. He was 22 years old, and unfortunately he and a couple of friends had gotten mixed up into drugs back in the 70s, and he had tried to come out of that. He had tried to get his life together, and by Christmas of 1976 he was on the right path again. He was getting his life together. Things seemed to be settling down, and he was getting his life back, and things seemed to be good. But over the holidays his mother started receiving some threatening calls, and they were extorting her, saying that her son was involved in drug money and he owed money and all these things, and they started threatening her to bring in $500. Now, $500 may not sound much now, but we're talking back in the early 70s. This was quite a bit of money, and she was scared. So she did do the drop off, and she dropped off the $500 and didn't get police involved and everything. And yet no one showed up to claim the money. And so that made it even worse, because now they had done what the person said, they had done what the blackmailer had said, and yet they excuse me 1 minute, there's a dump truck or something going by outside and you can hear it, so hang on. Okay, great. His mother had done everything right. She had given the money, she had done everything that they'd asked, and then her son was still in trouble and she was still getting these threatening calls. So Randy, being afraid and feared for his mother's safety and his family's safety, he went to the police and he asked for help, and he laid out the story about what's going on, and they said, we will help you. You can help us, you can be the pawn in our drug sting, we're going to catch these guys, don't worry. So they set up this scheme, and they were meeting at the Fontainebleau Motel, and this was in Valley View, Pennsylvania. Now, this was January 21st, 1977. This was after the holidays. This was the start of a new year. They were going to do this sting. Everything was supposed to go good. The cops were supposed to be there watching Randy's back, just in case a couple of his brothers, I've heard once that it was his father and his brother, and then another newspaper article said it was two brothers. So I'm not sure which one it was, but two men of his family showed up, even though they weren't part of the drug scene, because they wanted to watch their brother's back. And one of them had a gun and one didn't. Okay, so you've got the setup. You've got Randy walking into this motel, and he's the pawn. The cops are supposed to be there. His family's there. Everybody's there to watch this boy's back. Okay, unfortunately things go wrong terribly bad. Law enforcement doesn't show up in time. The two backup law enforcement don't show up in time. There's one police officer who is staying with the two brothers that show up. Now, this is where it gets so disturbing. The backup part of the sting operation doesn't show up until too late. Okay, they didn't show up when they were supposed to. When they showed up, all they seen was Randy Brosius got into a car with two people that he had known in the drug world, but weren't necessarily friends, a Richard Green and a Kenneth Linker. Now, by the time the cops show up, they see these two men driving away with Randy in the back seat. Now, here comes a really disturbing part. This is where some family has gotten onto Reddit and they give the story that's been passed down through the family. And this is what's really, really even more heartbreaking. The brother had a gun and he wanted to shoot at the car, but the law enforcement officer was so worried about him having a gun, he kept fighting with the brother to put the gun away. Instead of going after the car, instead of shooting at the car like the brother wanted to do, instead of the cop forgetting the brothers and going after the car, instead of the two law enforcement officers that were late, nobody went. So nobody shot at the car, nobody did anything. And the one officer that was there was so worried about this man having a gun that he didn't chase the car either. So now you've got a 22-year-old man who has tried to straighten his life up. He has just literally been handed over to the very people who have been extorting his family and blackmailing his family for money. Now, 44 years later, they said in all of the newspaper articles, it said that the police did track down the two men. The man was Richard Green and Kenneth Linker. They did track down those men. They were questioned, but there was never any arrests made. Now, here comes into the next thing where you have to read on Reddit. I'm not sure how to verify this, but they say that one man is dead and the other man entered the witness protection program and then died later. I don't have a way of verifying that, but basically the two men that Randy was last seen with were never arrested. They were supposedly questioned, but they were never arrested. And now they're all gone. Okay. So where do we go from here? 1978, April 1978 in Hewitt, Texas, a John Doe is found. Okay, now I'm going to show you a picture. Let me do a screen share here. I'm going to show you a picture, a cleaned up picture of Randy Brosius. Okay, so this is Randy Brosius. This is before he grew his hair out. So this was a few years before he went missing. This is him with white walls and fingers. Okay, now when he went missing, he had long hair. He was 5'7", around 140 pounds. But he had real long hair, at least down to his shoulders, they say, when he went missing. Now, April 1978, let me stop sharing this screen and I'm going to show you something else. Hang on, let me fix it. Go to here, share screen. Okay, April 3rd, 1978. This sketch is made of a John Doe. They called him Disco Dan because he was wearing some flamboyant clothes at the time. He had been shot in the back of the head and dumped in a culvert in Hewitt, Texas on April 3rd, 1978. His height and his weight match closely of Randy's. The clothing wasn't a match to what Randy was last seen in, but we're talking 15 months later. Okay, so this is 78. He went missing in 76 or in 77. So 15 months later, he could have, if he had survived, he could have definitely had some different clothes by then. He was dressed in really flamboyant clothes, so they called him Disco Dan. Now they haven't identified Disco Dan, and the case went cold really quickly. And somebody brought in the concept that this could possibly be Randy. They've never determined for sure if it was. It says that they are waiting on DNA results. I am wondering how long we have to wait, because this man has been found in 1978. Of course, they didn't put the two together until many, many years later. But this has been, I wrote about this case for the first time 18 months ago. So I know that they have had DNA results for at least 18 months. I believe they've had it for several years. So it makes me think that either this isn't Randy Brosius or they haven't got the test results back. So I will leave it up to you what you guys think. The nose definitely looks a lot alike. The eyes it looks like they could be the same shape. And then of course the hair, we know his hair was longer at the time of his disappearance. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So I want you guys to think about this. This is a 44-year-old cold case. Of course, if you have any information about Randy Brosius or Disco Dan, we're talking about the case Randy Brosius in Valley View, Pennsylvania, or Disco Dan out of Hewitt, Texas. If you have any information, of course, we ask you to call your local law enforcement office and give a tip. But this is what I wanted to share with you guys this week. This is a 44-year-old case, so this man would be 66 years old if he had survived. Unfortunately, there's some information out there that leads us to believe he is not, because he had some medications and things that he needed to survive, and he didn't have any of those things with him. So unless his captors were actively taking care of his medical needs, it's most likely that he is no longer with us. And most likely, since his captors were the very people who had been threatening his family, it's most likely ended in a very negative situation. So if you have information, of course, reach out. I know for sure that there is a niece that is actively searching for her uncle. And so if you have any information, we do ask you to reach out. There is family still alive that would love to know what this happened to this man. And they've even said, of course, if the people were found, if the people are alive and are found that did this, it wouldn't be much for justice if they came to, had to go to jail now after having 44 years of freedom. But just knowing what happened would give them so much relief. So this is a 44-year-old cold case I thought I'd share with you. It's kind of short, but it is very important. If you have any information, of course, reach out, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.
Perfect.